It started off with one of those truth or dare games played by many teenagers. Tristan and his best friend Kyle got stuck in the dare part. Hey, it was either go spend the night in a graveyard or toilet paper Mrs. Higgins' house. Mrs. Higgins was so mean that she'd frighten a ghost if it tried to haunt her. They'd take their chances with the dead rather than the living dead. Or at least they thought. Tristan, who stood 6 feet 1 inch with gray eyes, wavy dark brown hair, was of mixed race, and was very athletic. Kyle, who stood 5 feet 8 inches with gold-colored eyes, wore glasses, had multicolored hair, was Asian, and a bookworm. A very odd duo indeed, but it worked for them. They met in elementary school, and have been friends ever since. They played the truth or dare game with a couple of Tristan's football mates, and this is where it has landed them. Spending the entire night in a cemetery. Neither one scares easily, but this night was a little different. Not only because it was Halloween, but it was also the 100-year anniversary of Rebecca Spencer's death. A young girl local who was murdered one night on her way home from a dance. No one knew who had killed her. They just knew it was violent. And her murder was never solved. But they say that if the moon is right, you can see Rebecca walking around the graveyard trying to find her way home. Crying for her mom. But also beware of her as well. Tristan, tell me again why we're doing this? I would have preferred throwing bathroom tissue all over Mrs. Higgins' house. Exclaimed Kyle. Not looking too pleased about freezing all night. Like I've said earlier, I've always wanted to spend the night in a cemetery to know how it feels. And to see what will happen. Tristan replied with a smile on his face. Don't worry, I've also brought hot chocolate and sandwiches in case we get hungry during the night. And the car is just parked outside the entrance, which isn't too far. He smiles again at Kyle, who then rolls his eyes. People will get the wrong impression about us if this keeps up. But you do know the way to my heart. My stomach, said Kyle. Then the both started laughing. I think people already have that impression, and I thought that was supposed to be my line. Replied Tristan. Again they started laughing. While making their way towards the center of the cemetery to find a place to spend the night, they began to hear strange noises. Stopping now and then to get a better listen. Nothing. So, not letting it bother them, they just shook it off and continued on. Once they have found the perfect spot, they put down their backpacks, sleeping bags, sat down on the ground and talked. The position they found had a panoramic view of the cemetery, so as not to be caught off guard. Do you think your teammates will pull some stupid pranks? Kyle asked while unwrapping one of the sandwiches Tristan had made. No. Replied Tristan. They're not that dumb. Besides, this was a dare, not a scare. Cemeteries are really creepy at night, said Kyle, pouring himself a cup of hot chocolate and taking another bite of his sandwich. Never understood what people found fascinating about sleeping in them. In between bites. Don't worry, dear, I'm here to protect you, replied Tristan, grinning while unwrapping a sandwich for himself. After eating and drinking hot cocoa to keep warm, they eventually fell asleep. Out in the distance an owl hooted and the wind picked up. Tristan was startled awake by a faint sound. He couldn't tell if it was a remnant of a dream or real. But then he heard someone crying in the distance. He strained to hear the sound better, but it never got any louder. Then he caught a glimpse of a white figure walking between the tombstones. Well, maybe not walking, more like gliding. He shook Kyle awake to show him. What? Exclaimed Kyle, waking up, his mind still muddled with sleep. Look over there between those tombstones, said Tristan. Do you see what I see? What am I supposed to be looking for or at? Kyle asked, while stretching the kinks out of his body from sleeping on the cold, damp ground. There's a figure walking over there, said Tristan. We're seeing ghosts now? Asked Kyle. I thought that I was the one who's supposed to see ghosts. Not you. How many of those Yankee Doodles did you eat? Sugar Rush? No, stupid. I didn't eat any. Tristan replied with a frown. And just as he uttered those words, the ghost of Rebecca looked in their direction and started towards them with arms raised. What the hell? Yelled Kyle. Fully awake now. Both boys watched with wide eyes as her ghostly figure moved in their direction with such speed, wailing in such a high-pitched sound that it sent shivers down their spines. Wasting no time, Tristan and Kyle started gathering their things together and hightailing back towards the entrance of cemetery to the car. Once outside the cemetery, both boys looked back and saw Rebecca Spencer standing there looking back at them, crying. "Why isn't she coming after us?" asked Kyle. "I suppose she's trapped and can't step outside the boundaries of her murder," replied Tristan. Kyle looked at Tristan oddly. "And you knew about this?" he asked. "I was told by my grandmother about her," said Tristan. "She said wherever a person dies a violent death, their spirits remain to haunt the place for eternity. And sometimes may turn evil themselves." Tristan said without taking his eyes off Rebecca. "And this is the real reason you chose the cemetery?" Kyle asked. "Yes," answered Tristan. "How about filling me in?" replied Kyle. "I just did," replied Tristan. "No. How about the whole story?" exclaimed Kyle, looking more pissed than scared. "I will when we get home," said Tristan. "No one is going to believe this," said Kyle. "Maybe they will. And maybe they won't," replied Tristan. Then they both got into the car and drove away, leaving Rebecca Spencer at the entrance of the graveyard crying.